Welcome to Automation Caffeine, your dose of invigorating business automation tips packed as interesting anecdotes and questions. We have a different guest every episode from various industries, countries, and backgrounds for a half-hour online chat over coffee. My name is Jesse. I'm the co-founder of Trigger. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and above all, I am a coffee snob. Today, I am joined by Joëlle Stokkel, who is the manager of innovation at Shuttel, the ideal mobility card for corporations large and small. Hi, Joëlle.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good morning. As you know, I always ask people to introduce themselves in 3 words. What are your 3 words that you would introduce
Well,
others?
far and foremost, I'm the innovation manager of Shuttle.
Yeah.
But I also see myself as a global citizen, which makes it two. And last but not least, something you might not know about me is that I'm passionate about wine.
Wines. Okay, cool. And so I do know a little bit, but what's your favorite one? Do you have a favorite one? One specific, like anything, like you have to choose one.
No, that is impossible. It's very difficult to find the best ever. But let's make it as follows: traditional wines from the old part of the world, so predominantly France, European continent, and just occasionally like a Chablis, for example.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to disappoint you on this one. So my sister and my favorite wine happens to be the same one, and it's a South African wine, the chocolate block. I'm really sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. It's a personal preference, right? So every individual has its own personal
Yeah,
preference, and,
I
and mine tends to be, yeah, classic, I would say.
nice. Yeah, sorry to disappoint you there. Can you give a quick overview of what Shuttle is and does, and as the innovation manager there, what your role is, what you do?
Okay, perfect. Shuttle, yeah, Shuttle is a passionate team and dedicated to create innovative mobility solutions that make everyday travel easier and more sustainable. So the heart of what we do is our mobility card system, which is a tool designed to help businesses and their employees navigate various transport options effortlessly. So with our card or app, you can access more or less everything from public transport to shared bikes, car rentals, all in one place. So that is what we provide. And yes, we do a lot of more things, but basically, what drives us is to create a greener, more efficient way to commute, and we help companies solve that solution.
Clear, clear. And what is specifically your role within this?
So I'm innovation manager. So basically, it's a glass ball. No, no, it's not. It's actually my job to understand what the customer will need in the future. So I
Okay.
look at trends and changes in society and to understand everything which goes on in our industry, but also in other industries, to predict what kind of products and services we need to develop in order to stay ahead. Always thinking what comes next. Sometimes very small, just a button in an app, for example.
Mhm.
And in other occasions, very large, like changing the whole token methodology of our way of working. So yeah, it depends, but it is not a glass ball. It's fairly hard work, and 10 things fail and one is successful.
Okay, okay, interesting. And when you look at these like improvements that you do, what are some of the aspects that are sort of most important that you take into account? Like what do you focus on? Because you say like, okay, I have 10 things, but like what drives that you choose those 10 things over, I guess, 100 that you could.
First of all, it needs to fit our proposition. So it
Got it.
needs to fit what we do. It would be lovely to be in I don't know, hotel accommodations or whatever, and we might will be, but that's too far fetched from where we are today. So at Shuttle, we facilitate the transportation of approximately 240,000 people every day. So if we look at innovation, we basically look at what can we automate, what can we do to make the journey easier for those people who travel with our solution. At the same time, we also need to run a profitable business, and it's my responsible also to automate things which are manual labor, and which we could basically replace by making some simple steps in our process or skipping steps in our process, which can be done differently. Basically, it needs to enhance customer satisfaction as a number one priority, and we move from there. And basically, you have a foundation on which you build. So it's the structure which gives you the idea where the strategy should go, and that is basically the beginning of every idea, to optimize cost or to optimize the customer experience.
Yeah, because with so many people, I can assume that sort of the less friction there is with them using the card in this case, if I put it like that. I guess that is one of the main things when you say customer satisfaction. It's probably the frictionless use of your solution in all of the mobility aspects that you named, right?
Exactly, but also to surprise our users in a good way.
Okay.
Because no one likes a bad surprise, but it is a very lovely surprise if, for example, this morning I get a notification from our system, Joëlle, you go to your office and you have a chat or a coffee with Jesse, and perhaps it is a good idea to take public transport today because it's more efficient, you can prepare and are relaxed when you enter the office. And that's not here today, but that is some of the things we are working on in order to make sure that not even the process is flawless, which I think is a hygiene factor, but that also you actually are a partner in life for, first of all, for our customers, and then secondly, for the employees of the customers. So that are the ideas we're working on. And we can only work on those ideas if our core is flawless. You need to trust. We need to be a reliable source for your day-to-day travel.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal when your app says like, hey, you know what, take a bike or take public transport or take the car because there's 3 buses instead of trains or whatever.
Exactly.
That is super good. Yeah. Oh, I cannot wait for that to be there. I guess you cannot wait for that either.
No, it's a journey we're on, and we're getting closer every day. And especially with machine learning, artificial intelligence, steps can be made, but at the same time, those steps also have drawbacks. So what we do carefully, we do that with an eye on privacy and security, for example. But we're taking steps, step by step, we're getting there. And yes, we can predict with more than 98% reliability score what would be the best solution. Question is, how are you going to feed that information to your customers and to your users?
Yeah, that's really cool. 98% is super high for an estimation like that. So for people who might not be super well into these things, but that's really good. That's impressive. And I think indeed then, like, you have to obviously make it then super easy for people to use the recommendation. I guess that's the key that you have to then focus on.
Yeah, and that is that's the most difficult thing to do, because what for me would be super easy, I'm in the tunnel of transport and mobility, so for me it's a walk in the park, but for you it might be different. And it might also be different across countries, where your personal preference or your cultural setting might vary. So we still have a lot of work to do, and we always have a lot of work to do. But looking where we are now, knowing that we're only 9 years in this business, we made huge steps, and there are a lot of more steps to come, even steps which we will launch in Q4. So yeah, it's an evolving thing, which makes the job never boring, I would say.
Yeah. So basically, people should definitely follow Shuttel for these updates, because I have to say I find it very interesting what you do. And that brings me to a thing that obviously I'm asking you a couple of questions, but if you're listening to this live, you can also ask a question to Joëlle. We'll answer them at the end in our live Q&A. Just add it as a comment on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and we will pick it up. But right now we have another thing to do, and that is our Wheel of Unfortune, where we have a random question that we will ask you. It will be a random unfortunate question, So let's see what the wheel has in stock for you. Please share the worst advice that you were ever given. Yes.
Ooh, the worst advice. I think, and everyone who looks at this stream will recognize that you get a lot of advices throughout your life. It starts often with your parents or your relatives, and then it goes on with teachers, and then with peers and friends and family and all alike. Thinking about the worst advice, I would definitely say that it was at basically joining Shuttel. So I had a career in large corporations in supply chain and corporate procurement, knew nothing about mobility or transport or automated processes whatsoever. I was just making sure that those IT suppliers cut costs, basically. So being on the other side of the table, I would say. And then basically, I was working on a project to create a greener way to mobility, or to provide mobility to the employees of a large corporation. And then I met Wesley van Dijk, who is the founder of Shuttel, and he also had an idea to provide a solution to which is currently Shuttel. And he said, "Come, join me for dinner, and let's discuss, and come and work with me. Oh yeah, by the way, we are only with the three of us, and we do not have customers yet, but come and join us, and it would be great fun." And then obviously everyone, no exceptions, said, "What are you doing? Why on earth are you going to decide to be a sort of entrepreneur yourself?
Yeah.
You are throwing away your career," mostly heard comment, worst advice ever, I would say. All your security is gone. What if you would like to have children and you're an entrepreneur? You cannot fix that. And it continues and continues, as you might understand. But actually, I took the jump because I thought it was a once in a lifetime to develop a product which was not there, to design everything from scratch, to do everything which I was not trained for. But the worst advice in that period was the advice that I would throw away my skill set, and that it would not work due to the fact that I was not in supply chain or whatever. I was developing a product, no IT skills whatsoever. And basically, if your dream is big enough, and trust me, you can do whatever you want, because now 9 years later, we have a successful product. We have a stable financial income stream. And I'm still here. So basically, for me, it worked out. So if the dream is big enough, just go for it. And even though people advise against it, I would say.
And you have a family. So, I mean, you're even combining that. So, I mean, isn't that awesome? Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I have to say, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19. I think I fully agree, it's the worst advice. The best advice is always to follow your heart and do the thing that you love the most, and it will work out one way or the other. It was, I think it was that speech by Steve Jobs, where he says, "You can only connect the dots looking backwards, never looking forwards." And I think that's exactly what it is like. And yeah, I think it was a really good choice to do this, because it's one hell of a product that you've helped build.
Yeah, and even though you do not have the skill sets, if you surround yourself with people who have the right capabilities, you can learn a lot, as long as you're open-minded and able to take advice, good or bad, and make a decision and move forward. And so that would be, I think, my worst advice, and again, my best advice to you.
Oh, that is really good. When we were preparing, you mentioned that one way to improve customer satisfaction that you've applied is through is obviously you redesign processes. That's really clear, but you design them in a non-linear way. Can you explain what you mean by that? Because I think that was, I've never looked at this myself in this way, but I thought it was a really interesting way to frame this.
Yeah. So if you onboard a customer, and the customer needs to go to steps in order to complete the process. And you can start at step 1 and then you go to step 2. And if you are a consumer and you go to an insurance company, or you want to have a mobile phone provider or whatever, you have those steps, and often you see you are in step 1 of 5. And then you know what kind of things you need to do, which is great, but it's not so efficient, at least not from a Shuttel perspective. So we do customer onboarding, but we want the onboarding process to be as quick and effortless. At the same time, very efficient. We do not want to compromise on the data we are having. We also see that some smaller businesses drop out of our onboarding process due to the fact that they think it's too lengthy, it's too much effort, I do not know what they are doing. I thought we should redesign this and see how we can make it smarter while not compromising on the data we need to onboard the customer. So what we did is we basically ask a potential customer to leave some data, and then we kick off simultaneously a wide variety of checks we need to do in order to make sure that this onboarding goes smoothly. In our industry, sometimes there's a credit risk associated to a customer, and we're talking about larger amounts of money. So basically, we need to protect ourselves against customers who are not able to pay the bill, basically, at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Because we pre-finance all the transportation from a Shuttel. So there's a credit risk, and we want to credit check those companies. But at the same time, we also have legislation around anti-money laundering, which we need to comply with. And if you tell that to your customer, first of all, they do not understand or really do not care. Okay, do your checks, but they do not want to wait on it. So by starting all those processes simultaneously based upon a step 1 information, we actually could skip 3 phases of the onboarding process. And then immediately say to a customer, yes, we accept you, or no, we are not accepting you. And then continue with the remaining steps of the onboarding. Because if you ask a lot of data of those customers and you go step by step, it could be that someone is rejected by the end of the process, while you actually already had the first ID that it would be a rejection somewhere in the middle of the process. And that is valuable time of the potential customer, but it is also valuable time of our team. And it is the same action every day. And so instead of having one person working on one customer and then on the next and the next and the next, we automated this process while still having a better customer satisfaction rate on the onboarding process. So that is what my understanding of nonlinear is actually in parallel, trying to make sure that in a 5-minute window we can say you are accepted, your documentation is okay, and by the way, your Shuttel card or app is available for you today or tomorrow, and you can start your journey with Shuttel, go green, go whatever you want to achieve with our product. But at least the customer can start, and we solve a problem the customer has, because otherwise they would not have become a customer of Shuttel.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool that you can do that so quickly. So, and I guess that you can even say that if one of those 5 or 6 processes that you start linearly would come back with, hey, we need more information, you can then direct the customer to supply extra information. Whereas otherwise you would have probably asked that information and then they get rejected, and it might feel like, oh, but hey, I've given them so much information and they're rejecting me.
Yeah.
Take my data.
The biggest complaint we got in the old situation was that they had to provide bank information to Shuttel before we informed them if we would accept them or not, which is strange, which I would not like as a consumer as well. So basically what we did here is to bring the feeling we all have being a consumer to the table and say, okay, our customers are not happy and we need to hire more and more people to facilitate this process. what can we do to optimize the customer journey, and at the same time reduce the hours we spend on facilitating this process. And then you have the customization, because yes, so for you it could be that we accept you in one go and you get the notifications on this acceptance, but for your neighbor it could be different, and they get tailor-made information based upon their personal situation.
Yeah.
And then it makes sense, because then we do not have so much, or we do not have so many complaints. Why am I rejected? Or what kind of additional information do you require, and why do you require this information? Because we now can send the right message to the right person at the right time.
That is very interesting. Yeah, especially the bank account. I never thought about that, but it feels incorrect to supply that.
Exactly.
Whereas, like immediately, but then when you have a sort of a go no go moment in that process where everything comes together, and you say like, okay, you're accepted, then it makes sense for me indeed to supply this information. And
Exactly.
I think this is a really interesting sort of way to think about these processes, because I think this applies to many businesses, that you can see how you can redesign a process so you make because I think you do two or three things. I'm trying to summarize. So one, you make sure that the amount of information someone has to give is very limited, but enough for you to kick off all the processes that you need to check, and any information that you need afterwards, you postpone. You do that in parallel. So that's the non-linearity of it. So you try to do it as quickly as you can by doing it in parallel. I think that's one. And through that, so you sort of then delay the steps where data that people supply would feel like logical to supply after the go no go, where they go, okay, now I'm willing to give you more information. This sounds a little bit like I've once read this book by Seth Godin, which is called Permission Marketing, where he also says like, look, people don't want to give away more information than is strictly necessary for you in that case, like if you want to have like a white paper and email it, yes, they need your email, that's fine. But in this case as well, like the information I give would be just enough, and I would understand that for you to start the checks. Is that correct?
Exactly. And I think on top of that, we all know how it goes. If you are an entrepreneur and you have plenty of tasks and your team is like not too large, but you need a solution to make sure that your administrative burden is less. This is a good solution, Shuttel. I would like to use this solution, and I'm in it. And then the phone rings, or a customer comes in, or you need to focus on your core activities, because that's what you do while running a business, focus on your core activities. And often it's not the administrative burden on transportation of your employees. So we need to make sure that this time window is as short as possible, because basically those companies are earning money while focusing on their core business, not on going through our onboarding process. And dropout ratios are for us, like they were quite extensive. And now if you know within 5 minutes if you get a solution or not, that brings value for everyone, and also for us, but also for our potential customers, that they can focus on the things they need to do.
Yeah, I think that's also a really important point that you make there. Is it is not only good for Shuttel that you automated it; it's also good for the person who uses it. So you found that win-win by looking at this process in a very different way. How did you come up with this? Because I mean, like you said, everywhere I see those like step 1, step 2, and whatever, and you do it in a very different way. How did you think of this?
So the solution we are talking about is basically was live for almost 2 years, and the acceptance ratios were so, I would say, and the dropout was even higher. So there was a business problem. There's often a business problem when you start to rethink or redesign your business processes. And then normally it would be the IT team together with customer care and operations to decide, okay, how are we going to do this? And now we did not decide on how are we going to do this. We did not even decide on the technological foundations we would build this on. We basically started from scratch. And we were in a room with all people who are not trained in IT, but all customers. And we said, okay, how ideally would it be? and what can we do? And then we brought in technical people, people we hire to help us translate our ideas into to logic, I would say. And they said, oh, but yeah, if you want to do it, yeah, we think it can. Let's try. So we made a proof of concept, and then it worked out, and we tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, and basically we made a simple flow diagram and see how can we shorten this even more. What can we combine? If we combine this, are we compromising on user satisfaction or not? And then it was like organic kind of thing. So we started like, okay, our process is this big, and then smaller, 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 smaller. Okay, this is the smallest we can get, and still be compliant with every requirement or prerequisite we made at the beginning. So that's how we did it, and it should not be too big or whatever. It starts with, okay, what can we do? How does our process look like? And what can we improve? And if we improve one thing, what will happen to the rest?
Yeah, and basically you've been sort of like taking things out of the process instead of trying to add stuff, which I think is always a really good way to simplify things. And another thing that you say is basically your starting point was the KPI of customer satisfaction increasement, which you translated into the number of complaints about the process, and you knew which type of complaints they were. And that was sort of the starting point to improve that, along with, obviously, from the business perspective, the question of like, can we automate it more? Because the more automation in the process that you execute, as you said, many times, that's a big time saver as well. I really like the idea of starting with those KPIs. Was it easy to get consensus on what to improve with this process and how it would improve?
I think everyone saw the issue, so that was not a difficulty. And by just sitting together with a wide variety of colleagues, it is just bringing what are you basically, what do you hate about our process? What, and also in the work you need to do, because if you have the people who basically perform the repetitive actions day by day, they know what they hate about the process. Trust me.
Yeah.
You hear more than you want to hear. And that was a good thing, because then you design it and design it again. And basically, as a starting point, we took our process, we mapped our process, we draw basically a step-by-step approach, and then say, okay, what can we combine? And by doing so, it was not difficult to convince people to that it would be a good thing to do. The hardest thing to basically convince them about is on what platform are we going to build this, or how are we going to create this process in a completely different way than how we normally would design our processes. So the discussions with the IT department were harder than with all the other departments, because they obviously also have a philosophy on how we solve an issue. And it's not by adding more. No, it's actually by doing less. After explaining it thoroughly and giving the idea and also to use Figma, for example, to create some screens and to show everyone how it would look like, acceptance all over, and we're about to implement it. So it's really nice. It's really nice.
I like that advice. I think that's a really good advice for people. Think about the things that you hate about the process and that you think other people hate, and then from there try to solve those things to take it away. Because less boring or annoying work is always good.
Exactly.
That's all the questions that I have. If people have questions, you're still able to put them in the comments under our things. We have some questions coming in, so we'll ask those. Let's see. I think this is an interesting one for you. Because Olivia asks, how do you stay updated on tech advancements in mobility? And you said that you're not really a tech person, so I'm kind of interested in what you think about this. How do you do that?
I talk a lot with our suppliers. So they feed me with the information they have, and they make it in a form of language which I understand. Oh, I see that I'm too long sitting silent here. So I talk a lot to the outside world, I would say. Recently, I joined an AI conference, not because I'm an expert in AI, but because I would like to understand which use cases we could create using the technology. And then I'm not alone in Shuttel. We are with 40 employees who are well equipped and to whom I all talk while having lunch or coffee or whatever. And everyone brings their own ideas about where the world is going. So I follow the news, I follow the industry newsletters. Basically, it's a lot of reading, this job, and following your gut feel. Being in this industry for 9 years also gives me sometimes the opportunity to neglect certain trends because I know that from past experience that it would not fit our solution too well. And sometimes I'm just very curious, and then we make a proof of concept. See if it works for us. If not, it was just a proof of concept. It was my time and my time only, which is great. I think that I can basically do it like this.
Nice. Let's see. Alex has this question. It is, what trends in mobility do you think will shape the future?
We see different trends throughout the European countries. So for me, it will be very hard to give a general answer to the question because the local situation defines future trends, I would say. But focusing on the Netherlands, while Shuttel is a Dutch-based company, what we see is that there's more and more attention for CSDR, and mobility plays an important role in this trend, I would say. So carbon emissions and everything which is associated to this movement will be important in transportation. Urbanization, and not every person who has a house has the opportunity to have a car in front of their house.
Yes.
Or in a parking lot, it's a 0.3 or 4 point parking places versus housing or people.
Very low. Yeah.
So we need to understand how we create a smart ecosystem in mobility or mobility forms in order to facilitate people to move from A to B. So the trend is connectivity. It's go green. It is also tokenization. Why should I use a card or an app when I can do it with my bank account or with my wallet or whatever? So digitalization is a very important one. I hope that answers the question, but that will be generic, big topics to think about, and we are going to shape them one by one.
Yeah, and like you touched a little bit on the subject of internationalization there, and I think one of the, well, at least my frustration sometimes is that traveling across the border by train is sometimes a very, very big challenge. Just go from Amsterdam to Berlin is, well, let's say less than ideal. So I can imagine that these type of things are limiting to a concept like Shuttel.
Yeah, it is, and at the same time it is not, because if we are able to create a form of transit in order to make a more optimal journey from A to B, by being smart and facilitating a transfer, for example, and then we could actually add benefits. But the biggest problem for Shuttel is that in the Netherlands we are a very small country and we have a standardized public transport system. If you go outside the Netherlands, that is not always the case. So for Shuttel, it would be in the Netherlands a country approach. If we would look at Germany or France or Spain, for example, it would be a city-by-city approach. Where we could win some sort of a city and their surrounding area instead of focusing on the country as a whole. However, I believe that with the introduction of AMV, like the Europay MasterCard Visa rails into mobility, boundaries will fade and it will make things easier. We still need to convince the transportation companies to comply with it as well, of course, and that is something we are working on it. Our shareholders are working on it. So that drives us to create a seamless journey, even though you're in Barcelona or Madrid.
Yeah, and I assume that similar problems, like you said, like the 0.3 or 0.4 ratio of people with being able to have a car in urban areas is similar in other cities, because there's just not that space for everything anymore. And that means that if you take the inverse of that, that means that 0.6 or 0.7 people are either by bike or by public transport. So that means that they are probably already in a higher mix, and they are perfect candidates, obviously, for solutions like Shuttle. Is that a good analysis, or?
Yeah, that's a very good analysis. Yes, okay. And then obviously we are just a connecting hub, and we rely heavily on transportation providers, micromobility, in order to facilitate the journeys with their assets. So we are very curious on how big cities will evolve, if, for example, micromobility will survive or not. That is a big thing going on. And having said that, obviously the bike as a Dutchie is one of the most important transportation modes, which we would like to promote, because it's easy and it's healthy as well.
Yeah, and for people who are not from the Netherlands, we have this thing called OV fiets. It means public transport bike here, and I think it's like the biggest success that you can ever imagine. People can use their public transportation card to rent a bike at the big train stations, and then bring it back there. And I have to say that, like, I know many expats, and they all are like, "Oh yeah, just get an OV fiets. It's fantastic. It's a really good thing." And indeed, people bike a lot more because of that. Because at a station in a city where you normally would not have any, like the micro transport, like you said, you'd suddenly have access to a bike.
Exactly.
With Shuttle, you would have that as well, but everywhere, and that is
exactly.
Laura asks, what metrics do you use to measure automation success? This is
so we score NPS, but we also look at efficiency targets. So how many cases can we solve in an hour? How many cases can we solve in a day? How many complaints do we get on a process? So those are the usual suspects, I would say. And then we have a whole subset of KPIs, because we would like to be innovative. We would like to surprise our customers, as said in the beginning of our coffee, I would say. We also measure ourselves against our own metrics, like, is it innovative? Is it scalable? Is it future-proof? Is it intuitive? Because if it's not intuitive, it probably will not work or be worse. So you have those fast, hard metrics, which are based on numbers. They're all there, and everyone who's in the industry or in other industries knows that there are ratios which you take into consideration. But for me personally, and that's why I'm most probably innovation, is the soft metrics are far more important, because if people do not want to use it, it's not a good addition to our service, I would say. I hope that answers the question.
How would you measure a soft metric? Because it's soft, so it implies, I guess, that you can't easily measure it.
Yeah, but if we have a question on our customer support on this particular topic, by now artificial intelligence can tell you the customer satisfaction rate on the answer and the tone of voice, if a customer is happy or not happy. So even though it is obviously it is not a yes or no or a black and white way to measure it, it gives you a feel of if customers are happy or not, and if the customers who are actually using it are asking a lot of questions at customer care, that gives you the first idea. So it's not so tangible, I would say, but your gut feel will tell you whether or not it is something you need to dig into, and then you can make it tangible.
Yeah, that makes sense indeed. Last one is by Sarah. How do you encourage innovation within your team?
Oh, as said, it is not a crystal ball. It's not looking into what and predict the future. And definitely not. It's trial and error every day. So in my team, I try to hire people from a wide variety of backgrounds because that fosters innovation or at least open discussions. Young, old, male, female, different cultural background, and then we discuss, and we discuss a lot, and we bring news to the office, or we bring our talks or visits to the office. We discuss about hot topics. We look at industry peers. And basically, we keep ourselves busy following the internet, sometimes for days in a row. And sometimes it's just playing around with our system and see what we could do. But that is the starting point, and outside in. So also talk with people from outside the company, with our customers, with our users, with industry experts, in order to educate ourselves what is going on. And then, we try to explain it to one another, and we do that every second week in 45 minutes. And we said 45 minutes because then you need to go to the essence of what is on your mind. So 45 minutes for all 8 of us. Well, that's a short amount of time, so you need to prepare, and it's often 2-liners, and then time is up.
You have like 5 minutes per person or something, right?
Exactly. And if we think there's something which we would like to work on, or if we hear from one another what they're working on, it also gives you ideas.
Nice. Okay, thanks. That's all the questions that we now have time for. Joëlle, thank you so much for a lovely conversation and a lot of new insights, at least for me. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
And for everyone else, thank you for tuning in. This show will be made available also as a podcast. You can also watch it back on LinkedIn. And I hope to see you in roughly 2 weeks for the next one. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.